Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles here on the Triple T Radio Network. I am Nick, and of course, I'm always joined by my brother, my closest friend, my compadre, if you will. And he's also the man of the hour, the man with the power. His name is Q Ball Carmichael. Q, how are you?
What's going on, Nick? How are you?
Well, I could be better if this whole thing would have just started the way it's supposed to, but that's okay because the important thing that got out there was James Harris, who left us way too soon. It's been the talk of the town, the talk between you and I. So what I want is for you to take this moment and share your memories, your thoughts of the late James Harris, Kamala in the WWE, and the Uganda Giant all over the world.
Well, the first time I met him, I was a little shocked because I was still under the persona that he was Kamala, the Uganda Giant. And, you get that persona in your head when you're younger and it sticks with you. And then this guy with his big, booming, deep voice was over, "Hey there, man. How you doing? I'm James Harris." You're like, what?
Yes, totally southern accent on him, eh?
Yeah.
Big
straight
time.
from Tennessee. Unbelievable. But what a great guy. I mean, just, how you doing, sir? Nice to meet you, sir. One of those guys that had starred around the world in wrestling, but was so humble and so genuine and such a nice guy that, it just exuded from him. And a lot of my friends got to work with him over the years. And, everybody had the same thing to say about him. Just, when somebody passes, people often come out, and that's when they slam them, like Moolah got slammed in a few of her videos and things like that. But I base people on how they treat me. And he treated me great the first time I met him and thereafter. And just a really honest, genuine, good old country guy, truck driving man, and did the Kamala gimmick. And, I think that honestly, he has had some advantage taken of him when it came to money. And what a great story coming out of Canada is that Chris Jericho donated $5,000 to cover some of his funeral expenses. That's the type of effect that Kamala had on people. Somebody reaches out, they don't have to, but they do, and they say, "Hey, let me help out here." And, it just kind of really, that's the epitaph of a man like that, is everybody that could reach out and help did, and Jericho led the way. And, despite popular belief, no matter how much you main event around the world, the money gets spent, the houses get sold, the cars get traded in. And at the end of the day, it's how you're thought about when you leave this world that makes the difference. And that's your legacy. And he left a great legacy of people around the world that just loved him, And I share that same sentiment. He was a loved, respected, kind, good-hearted man. And, that's the nicest thing you can say about somebody. What a rough couple of weeks. I mean, it's been a rough 2020 for losing wrestlers. It really has,
Yeah, it has.
My good friend Big Slam passed a couple weeks ago, and then Kamala passed, and it's like, certainly I wasn't as close to Kamala as I was to Big Slam, but, when you go on the road and you share locker rooms with guys, and there's sort of a kinship in wrestling. It's a subculture. And that subculture for many years stuck together very close and kept it very close to the vest and was tight-lipped. And, I think that the greatest thing about Kamala is they never had him speak. So, the persona was never broken. Even to the point where I met him, it wasn't broken. Back then, you didn't look up people's names on the internet and see who they really were. You just knew him as a ring personality. So, I'm expecting somebody to talk like Idi Amin, the former ruler of Uganda, who Forrest Whitaker played the role in that movie. And you look at that, and you're like, that's what you're expecting, and you get this good old Southern boy. So, just a great guy. Sad that he left us. he had been sick. He was severely diabetic, and I know he'd lost part of his leg, and that was probably tough on him. So, but what a
No,
great guy.
it was sad. It was really sad. And then the heart, and then they say the coronavirus difficulties and stuff like that. It is hard because he had a rough last 10 years. I mean, he lost a leg, and then there was I believe he lost another leg, and like he's gone through a lot, man. It wasn't easy for him, and it's bad enough when some of us are not. I apologize. I should never put myself in the same category as you or some of these other guys that have been around for 30 years. But when you guys come out of this business, all you really want is your health and to be minimum in the pain level. And this guy, he just couldn't catch a break. And it's so sad that he's no longer here. I never spoke to the guy. I've never met the guy. I've heard amazing stories. I've had people write me since he passed that told me some stuff. And, he seems like an all-around wonderful human being. And the wrestling world definitely lost a legend and, quite frankly, a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. He wrestled all over the world, and he was known. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that, he was one of the most well-known figures around. He was in that category of a George the Animal Steel and a Jimmy Snuka, and everybody that wrestled in the 70s and 80s knew who Kamala, the Ugandan Giant, was, and in the 90s, I mean, you just knew who he was. So, now you say Kamala, people say Harris because that's Joe Biden's running mate. But the only real Kamala was Kamala, the Ugandan Giant.
That's right. You said it right there. You hit it right on the right on the head. That's exactly it. There is only one, and he's no longer with us. But his matches and his feuds won't be forgotten. So I mean, Southern Boy had a hell of a run in the world of professional wrestling, a hell of a run in the WWE. He you can't forget when someone leaves a mark. A lot of people don't realize, but for a big guy, he was really, he could move and he could work. He had his matches with The Undertaker. He had his matches with Hogan, and then not to mention all the boys he fought, whether it was the NWA, whether it was WCW, he's been around. It's not like he was never around. And, he had other names.
Yeah, he was around a long time. I mean, the guy wrestled, 5 different decades. I mean, geez, I mean, that's being around.
You're right. No, you're right. You are 100% right. Now, Q, in closing, what would you tell the fans that maybe have only heard of him? How would you categorize his in-ring work?
Very suited to his gimmick. His in-ring work was perfect for this crazy Ugandan Giant guy that he played, for sure. So I think, when you match guys up with gimmicks, you look at Jimmy Superfly Snuka jumping off the top rope or the top of the cage. You look at a guy like George Animal Steel that was just crazy with the green tongue. And you talk about somebody who had a gimmick that fit them to a T and was able to wrestle that style and be competitive with big name guys with that same style. You got to think of Kamala in those same words.
Absolutely. So, tonight we're talking the one thing we've been talking about since before I got married that we just haven't got to. We're going to commercial, but tonight's all about the good, the bad, the ugly. Promoters in professional wrestling. And I'm sure our man Kamala could have told a few stories on promoters. So we're going to get there. We're going to talk all things professional wrestling promoters. And Q, I want you to hang tight. We're going to go to a commercial break. The only thing I'm hoping is that everything works the way I want it to. How about that?
Perfect.
All right, we're back here on Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles, talking about the worst thing in professional wrestling, a bad promoter. Q, I don't even know where to start. I mean, like, I've been smartened up. I get the business, but I'm going to let you take the lead on this one. Every once in a while, I might throw in a couple little shots here and there. I ain't using names because that's just not what you and I do unless they really
Right.
deserve it and the world's talking about them kind of deal. But, Q, what would you say to a bad promoter in 2020, even though they're everywhere?
Uh, Go back to buying a seat at a real wrestling show, you know, or, it's funny because I'll tell you, we had an open door policy at Omega. When Omega restarted running about 7 or 8 years ago, ran for 3 years, and it was Shane Helms, Mike Maverick, and David Coates were behind it, and Matt and Jeff wrestled there all the time. And we had an open door policy where any promoter could come to the show, get in for free, come in the back, watch what we were doing, and learn because these guys wanted the business to be better. Well, the only guy that ever came to the shows is a guy who is a manager of a car lot in Winston-Salem. He would drive 2.5, 3 hours, and his name's Brian Kanabrowski, and he's from up around my neck of the woods in upstate New York. And Brian would drop everything and come to the shows, sit in the back, ask some questions, be a sponge. And, his promotion is, I believe PWX is the name of it. And this is a guy that fills up a building with 600 or 700 people every time he runs with a roster of incredible talent. So Brian definitely learned how to do a lot of that stuff by coming to Omega. But the thing that amazed me is within less distance than him, there were at least a dozen promoters who never took Omega up on the offer to come and watch and listen and learn. And I was totally befuddled by that. How you have these guys that are running these incredible events that, we're selling out 2,000 and 3,000 seat buildings on a regular basis in their rerun, the reboot, and offering to help train other promoters on promotion of events, how to acquire top talent, how to run the card top to bottom, why matches go first, second, third, fourth main event. And yet there was only one guy that ever came. Well, that's not true. Dan Wright came too. Dan, CW's cousin, came too. And Dan ran for a very long time back in the 90s and drew big crowds of 300 or 400 or 500 too. So Dan was always there. He was a staple there. But Dan had already learned how to do it. And Dan's the guy that I guess maybe 5 years ago gave me back. I remember telling the guy gave me back my resume, my videotape.
Yes, I do.
In fact, that was Dan Wright. That's CW's cousin. And Dan always ran great shows. But, there's the other side of the coin. There's a guy I used to wrestle for in West Virginia. And back early in the 90s when I was kind of restarting my career, I'd been out for a couple of years. I went to Luthez, and then my mother was sick. And so I spent 3 or 4 years really not wrestling a lot. So when I first started to take off in the early 90s, I would wrestle for this guy because he booked great talent like Roger Anderson and Frank Parker from Death and Destruction and other guys that could just flat out go. And here's what we'd always do, and I told you about this off the air, is there'd be 6 guys booked. And what is put up surprise main event on the poster, and it would list the 3 individual matches. And of course, right at intermission, there'd be one babyface would go over, and another heel would come out and jump, and there'd be 2-on-1. Then there'd be 3-on-1. Then the other 2 baby faces would come out and chase them off. And then the promoter would get on the mic and say, look, we're canceling all the rest of the matches. We're sending the other guys home. For the main event, I want a 6-man single elimination tag event for the second half of the show. And so then we would have to go out, and the 6 of us would have to go to an hour and 20 minutes long in a
Jeez.
6-man elimination match. And I'll tell you that steps up your game because
Yeah, I bet it does.
got to keep a crowd interested in that match and what you're doing. But one time we went to a show, and I don't know what had happened or what had failed. But I looked out of the curtain and I literally saw a handful of people. So the promoter comes to the back and he says, "Look, there's 26 people paid. I'm happy to cancel the show and let y'all go home, or I'll just split the gate evenly between all of us." So we all conferred and we're like, "Look, I don't know about you guys. I drove 4.5 hours to get here. I came to wrestle." And they were like, "Yeah, us too." And we're like, "You know what?" Told the guy, "Don't worry about it. Make it up to us down the line." And we went out and we wrestled for those 26 people just exactly like we would have if there was 2,600 there. And he continued to run shows and he did make it up to us. He would have us all get in town early. He would take us out to eat and pay for it and things like that. So he made up for it. But there was that night of driving 4.5 hours for 26 people in the building. So and then there's other horror stories. There's a story one time where Julio De Niro, Jimmy Cicero, and I wrestled at a bowling alley of all places in Tidewater, Virginia. And Bill Eadie was on the show. He was wrestling as Matt Superstar. And Mike Maverick was on the show. And I think Shane Helms was there too. This is going back 94, 95, before anybody had any sort of fame or anything. And I we're sitting there talking. It was kind of funny because the one kid that was wrestling Bill in the main event, he went up to Bill and he said, "Look, man, I don't mind doing that hardcore if you don't mind." So Bill goes, "Okay, kid." Bill looks over at me, glances at me, and smiles and calls the ref over. And he says to the ref, he goes, "Whatever you do, don't count us out on the outside." And Mike Maverick and I still talk about it to this day. I mean, Bill laid down a trash can full of glass bottles. He stuck this guy's head in there, and he dropped an elbow or a leg, I forget, off the ring apron onto that trash can, and all you hear is glass breaking, and somebody
Oh.
go, "Oh," like this, and I'm like, "Whoa!"
Oh.
So at the end of the night, the promoter comes up and he goes, "Look." And we knew they had like 175, 200 people there. And we saw the admission. He goes, "Look, I don't have the money to pay you three." So I said, "Okay." So I said, "We'll talk to those guys." I took my belt off and I went up behind the promoter and I put my belt around his neck. And I put my knee in his back and I pulled back as hard as I could. And he just froze with fear. And I told Julio, I said, "Get his wallet out of his pocket." And Julio took his wallet out. I said, "How much is in there?" He goes, "God, it got to be $300-400." I said, "All right, take out what we were supposed to make." And Julio goes, "Do you want me to take all of it?" I said, "No, just take out what he's supposed to pay us." So he took out what we were supposed to get paid. I let go of the belt. I turned the guy around. I said, "If you ever do this to anybody again," I said, "this is the least that's going to happen to you." And funny story, he disappears off the face of the earth.
Of course.
About 5 years later, he calls me and he tells me who it is, and I'm like, you know, "What are you doing calling?" He goes, "Look, I just wanted to apologize. It was a crappy thing to do. I didn't mean to do it." Fast forward about 15 years, he's up in Wisconsin. That was in Virginia. He's up in Wisconsin, and he goes around and gets a couple guys who want to wrestle, and he gets them to go out and sell sponsorships and collects money for the ring rental. And the night of the show, he doesn't show up. The ring doesn't show up. Nothing shows up. So people start getting a hold of me going, "Hey, do you know who this guy is?" So I tell them the story. And so, like, now he's a wanted man in pro wrestling. If he
Yeah.
shows his face again, he's probably going to get hurt really, really bad. I doubt he will. But I'm going to have people from Alabama calling me about him, people from Wisconsin calling me about him. Just a terrible, terrible human being. Just
Bad
the
choice.
Yeah, it was a bad choice to mess with
Bad
us.
move, buddy.
Yeah,
Bad move.
because back in those days, I probably would have strangled him to death. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't have our money, if I wouldn't have strangled him and probably be getting out of jail this year.
Thing
So
is,
that's how
man,
tough I
you know
was.
what pro wrestling is like. I mean, these boys are driving 3-4 hours to do a show. They want their money. You know, I'll tell you, when I broke into wrestling, it was nothing. I was trained for free, and I'm not kidding you, and I'm not proud of it. As I grow older, I realize just how many mistakes were made, and I can only speak for myself. But when I started, I got a call from a good friend that said, "Hey, want to wrestle?" And he said, "We have this role we want to do," and I said, "Cool." He said, "Come to the university." I went to the university. I'm thinking it's going to be a ring, and they're going to teach me. I think I was there for an hour. We all hung out, had a cigarette or two. I met Danny Marsh, who you've heard me talk about, and
Yeah,
I kind of sponged myself to him because he had worked in the WWF, so he was going to at least tell me the good and the bad, I guess. But
right.
not even not even 2 months later, and not even a month later, and I'm in the crowd, and then 2 months later I'm bumping around, and do this, do that, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do it because I want to be here, and I wasn't smartened up yet. I just want to
Right.
be in the business. And then I come to find out, as I gain respect and people talk to me like yourself, all the guys, Luke Gallows, guys I've spoken to over the years, Chris Masters, all these different guys where I've talked to them and they're like, oh, no, 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 that's all wrong. Like, you shouldn't have been, if you were only doing this, you shouldn't have been here. But, it was working towards something that I thought, hey, problem was I wasn't getting paid at all, not a penny. I hurt myself. I didn't get paid. And as the famous story goes, my last night in wrestling, I was being paid. I drove to Fredericton. I fell. My head bashed off of a steel steps. There was blood everywhere, and I'm still supposed to go back out again. And I get in the back, and the show is over. I get $20 for that, and I was like, I'm done. The hell with this. You know, you're gonna insult me. I do whatever you ask. You know what I mean? I did anything. But then it was like, okay, I know a lot. I've been here, and you're gonna give me $20. So I'm just gonna say, you know what? I'm good. And between you at the time and other people, it was like, no, I'm doing the right thing. I'll just quit. The radio show was doing great. I'm doing good, obviously still. But I mean, yeah, like, $20, man. You can't slap me any harder. I mean, you might as well just do it straight up. You know, it's just $20. I just, I can't figure it out.
Well, there's promoters over the years that have paid the boys and hot dogs and soda instead of cash, and there's guys that have just you get to the show and the crowd's out there and you're hoping to get your envelope early and you don't, and the promoter calls you in the back one at a time and he says, look, the money guy took off with the money, so I don't have it to pay you. And it kind of I'll tell you, the biggest debacle I ever saw, and I pointed in that direction. It's called The Night the Business Was Exposed. And this was, I guess, 98, 99. A guy decided to run a show about 30 miles south of where I've been running in the same building for 5 years. We've been selling it out. It only held about 475, 500, but we've been selling it out. And so ECW was hot at that time. And so he books this event at this indoor soccer field, which is enormous. He brings in like 500 ringside seats. So during the week, I'm talking to him going, hey, how's it going, man? Does it look good? He goes, oh, yeah, we're going to sell it out. It looks great. So he's got, this is my Iron Mike Sharp story, if you remember it. He's got Sabu and Chris Candido and he's got the Headbangers before they went to the WWE, but they've been fresh out of Smoky Mountain. He's got Axel Rotten, Balls Mahoney. He's got me, Sean Powers, Chris Stevenson. He's got Cicero. He's got Iron Mike Sharp. He's got Tommy Dreamer. I mean, he's got all the ECW
He's got a
stars.
crew.
Yeah, he had a group. He couldn't say no, and he booked it. And he told everybody, he goes, to pay X amount of dollars, which was a ridiculous amount of money. But, look, it was like a Sunday night and everybody was off. So we all went, and we knew we were in trouble when we went in the building, and we get dressed and we peek out and there's like nobody.
Oh,
like,
no.
They might not be letting them in yet, and so they let him in, and there was maybe 40 people there, 45. And one of the funniest things I ever saw is in my match, it was me, Sean Powers, who was trained by Ivan Koloff. He wrestles Solomon Spades now. There was me, Solomon, and I think it was Chris Stevenson, who used to manage 3 or 4 Ric Flair's Gold's gyms up around Raleigh. Wrestled for a long time against Axel and the Headbangers. And so we go out and we don't know we're not getting paid yet at this point. And we go out, and so we do our match, and the word had gotten out to us at the ring. The referee said, "Look, nobody's getting paid." So we're out just having a good time. But at the end of the match, Axel goes back to the locker room and gets a hat and passes the hat around, telling people that the promoter's not going to pay us, and if they would be kind enough to drop a few bucks in. And Axel goes around and gets like $95.
Not bad.
He got paid, but I never forget. I heard Mike Sharp walks into the lobby, and we were like the first opening match. The 6-man tag was the opener. And so Mike Sharp walks in the lobby and goes, "Nobody wrestle anymore. I'm going to get this straightened out." And this guy's in the office with the owner of the soccer field. And, we let the guy with the soccer field know he's about to have a riot. We're about to tear the building apart. So he decides, he's deciding what to do. And Iron Mike Sharp comes out and he goes, "Boys, none of us is getting paid." And he says it in that booming Iron Mike Sharp voice, and he's got his boots and his trunks on. "Nope, we're all getting." So it's like, wow.
I remember this story now.
Then the soccer promoter, the soccer field owner, decides to write everybody a check, right? Well, It's a business. We think the checks are good. So everybody goes back home, tries to cash their checks, and they're bouncing. So I go to the local bank where the check was drawn on because I lived right there. And I went in, and the check was no good. It was drawn on a closed account. So it was check fraud. He wrote fraudulent checks on a closed account. So I went to the bank manager. I said, "Look, you might want to call him because my next stop is the police station or sheriff's department, and I'm going to file fraudulent check charges on him. And since the checks are written on your name and your bank, I'm going to name your bank in it too." So the guy goes, "Hold on, come sit down." So he calls the guy, and the guy says, "Oh, no, it was a mistake. Go ahead and pay him out of my other account." So I get paid. Well, I found out everybody's check was drawn on a bad account, so I told everybody what they had to do. But now you got guys going back to New Jersey and Pennsylvania and back down south to Alabama, and everybody's got a check that's worthless. And when's the next time they're going to be in Northern Virginia to deal with cashing that check? So most of the guys just wrote it off as a business loss. I think maybe me, and I think I got Cicero and Julio to do the same thing. I think they got paid, but I think most guys didn't get paid. Now, this guy had been a ring photographer and actually had some of his photos published in PWI, Wrestling Eye, and some other magazines. And boy, let me tell you something. He disappeared off the face of the earth after that night. But if everybody wants to look up the night the wrestling business was exposed, it'll talk about Woodbridge, Virginia, in the indoor soccer stadium and what happened and how it made the papers. And it was, It was one of those crazy things that you couldn't make that stuff up. It had to be true. It was so bizarre. So there was a lot of angry guys there that night. They
No
really were.
doubt.
And then they were even madder when they got the bad checks, but they were so far away they weren't going to
Nothing they
drive
could
back
do.
down.
All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back. I want to talk to you one more story that I experienced, and then we're going to talk about what is the biggest prostitution in professional wrestling, which I know you're going to have a field day with. So hang tight. We're coming right back in just a moment. That's right. Everything we are and everything we're always going to be is Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles right here on the Triple T Radio Network, home of the Truth Busters, home of Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles, and who knows what else is coming. The exclusive, but you never know when it's going to appear. But here is the thing, okay? I was going to tell you this story about promoters, right? You know, I drove six guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys up to about 3 hours from here, right? I thought, well, this will work out. You know, I'll get some gas money out of it anyway. I wasn't working or nothing. I just wanted to hang out with some friends. I was going through a hard time. Made like $30, $25. That was it. That was my gas. That was, you know, if I could charge 50 cents a mile, you know, like back in the day, or maybe done like an old Bronco Luvage gimmick and make up some peanut butter sandwiches, I'd have had it made. Charge $1.50 sandwich, but I didn't. So let's talk about it. What is the most prostituted thing in the business? And it is very simple. It is training professional wrestlers when you can't even make the call for them to go anywhere. Now some can, some will send. I will say that there's Peter Smith here. He will send the guys over. He'll get them booked in England. He'll get them booked overseas,
Yeah,
and that
he's
right
legit.
there, yeah, he's legit.
Yeah,
Like that's good money. He's sending them
right.
where they're gonna at least make money, get noticed, get experience. But if
Yeah.
you're just sending them around here over and over in the loop, you're not really learning anything new because not a lot of guys will come into the Maritimes anymore. They don't get booked like it used to be. But he tries to give them, the best, head start he can. But I've heard it a million times, and I've heard Ric Flair say it too, that it's the most prostituted thing in the business, training wrestlers. Am I wrong? Am I wrong saying
No,
that, Q?
you're 100% correct, man. There are guys that have never wrestled outside of their own state, have never wrestled for any major federation, have never wrestled in front of more than 300 or 400 guys, and they open a wrestling school and they sell this BS to these young guys who just want to wrestle and learn the business. And these guys teach them how to bump, and they call them wrestlers. And here's the thing, and I've posted it many times before. Look, go to the Monster Factory, go to a legitimate school around the country. When I decided to be trained, there were three places that trained wrestlers. There was Vern Gagne's in Minnesota, there was Hearts in Calgary, and my Via in Hawaii. And I decided to make the jump and go to Hawaii because it was a much warmer climate and women wear a lot less clothing. So,
I love your
I
honesty.
in, in 1983, no cell phones, no internet, no way to connect. Ma Bell, the old telephone monopoly, was still in charge. So here I go, selling everything I own, packing up, moving 5,000 miles away from every friend and relative that I ever knew in my entire life, landing on a plane, having to find a place to live that day, having to figure out a way to get to the training school and meet the guys I was going to train with. And that was before Uber or anything else. So you had to figure out how to read a bus schedule and take a bus here and a bus there. So, I mean, it was really difficult. Now, I was there about 3 months, and my brother, who was a Marine, got stationed from Okinawa to Hawaii. So after 3 months, it was different. I had a place to stay, and I had my brother there and family there. But for the first 3 months, there was nobody. I didn't know anybody. So when I hear somebody complain about having to drive 200 miles to a legitimate school when there's some backyard guy 50 miles away they'd rather go to, I sat there and look at it like this. Okay, if you were training to have a successful career in any line of work, you would go to the proper school. Look, if you want to be down here in the Northeast, let me use the Northeast, I'm more familiar with it in the South. If you want to be an engineer, you go to a place called Drexel University in Philadelphia. It has the most successful engineering department, one of the most successful ones anywhere in the country. If you want to if you want to become a computer specialist, you go to DeVry Institute, or you go to somewhere like that. If you want to be an auto mechanic, you go to, I think it's called AMI in Florida, and they teach you nothing but auto mechanics, motorcycle mechanics. You don't go to some guy who's got a bike shop that's barely scraping by a living selling 3 bikes a month over here in somebody's garage. Your education determines your success in anything. So when you're going to get educated, make sure, and if you're young and you don't have a family like I did at the time, make sure that if you have to pack up and sell everything you have and pay for a move somewhere, go and visit a respectable school, go and rent a room somewhere, get a cheap hotel room, do whatever, find somebody to live with, get a roommate situation, whatever you have to do to go to a quality wrestling school, because those are the ones that are going to open up doors for you. Look, it's no secret that fortunately most of these guys, like a Danny Gage for instance, can make a phone call and get somebody from the WWE to take a look at least a video, or to bring you in for a dark match or bring you into NXT, take a look at you or something. These things are so important. I had a wrestling school here. I had great connections. Al Snow, buddy of mine, was at TNA. I had, before Steve Corino was done at WWE, I had Adam Pearce. I was able to make phone calls to get in contact with people to get somebody who was talented looked at. And Steve Corino and I had this conversation last October. I was getting ready to do a seminar and go to Georgia, to an area I hadn't been in years. And I was talking to Steve, and he said, look, Hugh, if you can find somebody that has a good look, athletic, in shape, got a good look, even if they can't wrestle real good yet, we can teach them that. Just make sure that they have a clean background check because those things are important. So,
Sure they are.
stay out of, if you want to be a successful pro wrestler these days, you got to stay out of trouble, stay away from the drugs. You've got to train and get a good look, and you've got to get some basic skills, but you've also got to go to a school or an academy that can open some doors for you.
Yes.
If you're going to if your whole goal in wrestling is to wrestle one Saturday a month in any particular state, then if you go to a local guy who's wrestled in one or two states, never made the big leagues, never done a dark match, has no connections, that's fine. What I'm saying is most guys get in the business almost to a certain point with delusions of grandeur. They see themselves main eventing at the WWE someday, or they see themselves in TNA, or they see themselves maybe in what's left of the NWA. But you've got to go to places that have those connections. And that local guy that's running that school in his brother-in-law's barn, where there's hay surrounding it and two cows in there, and he tells you about his successful career wrestling in the state of Georgia. Oh yeah, and once, by the way, I wrestled in Florida 10 years ago. But primarily, I'm a Georgia superstar. And check that person out. And I'm not using Georgia for any particular person's name or anything, but honestly, there are talented guys out there running schools. But if they don't have connections, you're going to have to do an awful lot of work on your own. And it's not 1998. You can't send a videotape up to Howard Finkel, God rest his soul, and expect him to put it in a VCR and actually watch it. It's not going to happen. So you do need to have some connections or have somebody that's connected and somebody that runs a legitimate school, because guess what? If they get you into the performance center, you don't even understand what your day is going to be like or what your workload is going to be like. I mean, you're going to work out 6 and 8 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week. I mean, it's just going to be a rigorous schedule, but you got to go with somebody that's connected. You just have to if you're going to make it.
I gotta say this because everything you just said, and I have to say this because somebody posted in our comment and all they put was a smile face, and his name's Tim Keeler, and I know you know the name because I've been talking to you about Timmy. He wrestles here as Fantana, and I think it's funny because I'm just going to give you a Reader's Digest version, and I'm going to take it back a bit to the way you said that. Tim, who at a very young age wanted to be in this business, he met with Body Slammers, which was Wayne Kreiderman. He's up in the Ontario region. Yes, he could get him booked. He had a tryout with WWE that Tim did the work to get. And then not only that, but then he gets the opportunity to go up to Mississauga and join up there with Santino and his school, which obviously we both know he can make calls, but Tim drops everything and he's going to do this because he wants it, not because he's good with working on Saturdays, for the local market. He wants to go up because he wants to work 7 days a week. He wants to train it. He wants to eat it. He wants to sleep with it. He wants to earn it, and so when you say all that about the importance of, you can work in one area, but, that's all you're going to really be known for. you're not going to go anywhere because you don't have anyone to make the call. Not only do you got to make the call, but you got to want to do it. And when I hear Tim say with the smile face, and I know he's obviously tuning in, and this is not me trying to put him over or kiss his ass, because I just don't do that anymore. But I think it's great, and to me, it's a lot of what you just said is Tim is the opposite. So it kind of shows that if you put the work in, you put the time in, you're willing to sacrifice what you have in life because you really want this. You want to be out there entertaining, then my hat's off to you, Tim. Go to Mississauga. Go get what you want. Go get in the business of pro wrestling 7 days a week. I really do believe that everything you just said, he is the opposite. He is the good of the good, the bad, the ugly.
Well, it's funny, and I don't mean to seem distracted, but we were just talking about Brian Kanabrowski as being the only promoter that ever went and watched the Omegas and learned and draws massive crowds when he promotes. And he put a comment in, no power outage today.
Yeah, I know. I seen that. I saw it.
He's back in upstate Western New York where I'm from, and he's listening, and he completely understands. I mean, he was the guy that came to the Omega shows after working, a 10-hour day, cutting early at the car lot he runs, and jetting over there from Winston-Salem all the way to Raleigh to catch a show to try to learn something. And his success in promoting has been massive since that point. I mean, he just really packs them in, but also he uses incredible talent, the best of the best. I mean, some of the names he's had come through there is crazy. So it's good to see Brian reaching out in there and that he's listening and paying attention and knows that I've been talking about him. So
I know, right?
It's good to see that. But, he's one of those guys that will tell you the same thing. About schools and talent. The guys, we have CWF down here, which runs really close to High Spots, and they do a great job, and they've trained a lot of people that have been signed, and I know they've trained a lot of people that work for Brian. So, there's some good places down here. The CWF's been around for 20 years. Jeff Rudd runs it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and just a guy that's been around the business for 25, 30 years, so knows what he's doing. And those guys have had guys, right out of training get signed by NXT and WWE. So, another great promotion. And look, there's a lot of schools out there that are great. And if I only mentioned one or two, it's because they're the ones that came to mind. But there are some quality places out there to get trained. You just gotta seek them out, and then you really have to look for the pedigree of the guy that owns it or runs it. And the guy himself does not have to be a former star, because I've seen schools that have a big name who shows up once a week to collect the money, is not involved in the training or anything else. And yeah, maybe he can make a phone call for you, but all the guys that I know that have either been there or have not been there, but have gotten guys there consistently, they can pick up a phone and make a call and get you a shot. Those are the guys that I'm talking about right now. Guys that have kicked out major talent over the years that have signed. Manny Fernandez has a lot of his guys he trained signed. And I always wish that he had a centrally located school that would train full-time. Curtis Hughes has had some guys who got signed. CWF has. The Monster Factory has. There's more out there. Those are the ones that come to mind right off the bat.
Well, take a peek at the comments, because Morga posted there, and I just think you might be interested when you see the next thing that was posted. You may not, but I think you will.
Your page or my page or what?
I don't know. It's we now work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, and E. High Spots is now in my building, and the guys and gals are now TV ready for the same aspects of production like the Performance Center. So when I see that, there's no name to it for me, but when I see that, I just think, how amazing is that? Because people do tend to think there's only one place to go, obviously, and that's the WWE Performance Center. But there are companies out there that are preparing you for the future and
Oh, absolutely.
preparing you for more than just the WWE, but all points in between. So, what wouldn't you agree though?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely guys out there. Oh, yeah, that's Brian. Brian runs the school too. And, I mean, his promotion works with New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, High Spots is in the building. And that's why I met Brian. I said Jeff, but I met Brian. And Brian's, does great things as far as running shows and promotions, but he's worked hard to get well connected. And I'll tell
Yes,
you the reason is because he gives a
please.
damn about the people that wrestle for him, and he cares about them, and that's genuine, man. He's a friend of mine, and that's a genuine statement. And he's well connected. He can get guys looked at. He can get guys. He gets guys signed. I mean, he's got working relationships with tons of promotions. But Brian's the type of guy that has worked very hard over the last 10 or 12 years, and Brian, if it's longer, correct me, but the last 10 or 12 years of building a promotion, being attached to a school, um, building relationships with these promotions, so you can have people go places and get seen, get them looked at, and people get contracts. The great thing about Brian is the type of guy that never asks for anything in return. He's not signing these guys to a contract where they got to pay him 10% or anything like that. At least I don't think he is.
No,
Just
that was
kidding, Brian.
just Vern. That was just
Yeah,
he was ahead of the curve.
yeah. He cares. He cares a lot about wrestling and the guys that wrestle with him and for him. And he's always told me, he's like, Q, drive up for a show, watch what we do, see if you can help me with anything, and I'll throw you some money and I'll pay for a hotel room for you and I'll buy you dinner. That's the type of guy he is. It's just that he's very appreciative of anybody that reaches out or helps him, and he's one of those guys that pays it forward 100% of the
I love
time.
that. I love that.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Brian. I can't. And he used to, not as much anymore, but he used to call me a lot. And he would call me when he first started running pro, and he's like, "Hey Q, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? Or what do you think of this?" And we were always in contact, and we're still in touch on Facebook a lot. But he has a real busy business, and on top of that, he's really got 2 full-time jobs with the wrestling too. So yeah, great guy, good friend. When somebody tells you, "Look, just come on up and hang out with me for the night. I'll get you dinner. I'll throw you in a hotel room. I'll give you a few bucks." I mean, that means a lot, because there's other guys that could do it but still don't do it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yep.
He's a genuine guy, and he's a homeboy of mine. So yeah,
Well,
he's got some good stuff. He's from upstate New York, like me.
I'm gonna get in contact with him. I want to get his stuff up on our website because I want people to see it.
Yeah, Brian, Nick London's going to reach out to our producer, and let's get Brian on one night as a guest. That'd be great.
I'm in. Next
he can push
Tuesday.
whatever he wants and talk about whatever he wants. I know.
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, Brian, any Tuesday you can come on. Let us know the week ahead of time. We'll get you on the show, man. Love to have you on.
I'm all about it. You know that, Q. I'm very open-minded. Anything we can do.
It's funny, people will tell you how bad they want to be in the wrestling business or how successful they want to be as a promoter, yet they don't do anything about it. Here's a guy that talked the talk and walked the walk. I mean, did it, did it, followed Omega, picked my brain for as much as he could get out of it, continues to pick everybody's brain, and he's so selfless and so egoless when it comes to his guys and paying his guys. He's probably the best paying promoter around. I mean, there's other good paying promoters, but I mean, Brian pays his guys really well. He draws nice houses and he shares the wealth.
I'm going to call him.
Good,
hold on.
Good guy. Got to get him on the show.
Well, maybe I'm calling him right now to see if I can get, booked. Just kidding. Right, that was a joke.
No, I said he books talented guys.
Yeah, and you know what? He just said it best right there. Number one, Brian, right? You said Brian.
Yeah.
Brian, whether you like it or not, I'm going to get you on this show, brother. But here's what he just wrote, and I think it's like perfect to leave with. But I want us to be the last place before they make it to TV. That's my role in the business, period. My networking with other companies is there as a tool for others to use. You tell me that guy does not pay it forward. You tell
Oh,
me
that's
that, and then maybe I'll believe you. But obviously, he's paying it forward. I love
he
him
is.
already.
And you know what's funny is, I mean, he's super successful at his regular job. I won't go into it. But what he regularly does, I mean, he is a big dollar executive in the auto business guy, makes a ton of money. But, you know, he sinks a lot of that money back into the wrestling business, and he has to build a first-class production. His production is incredible, but he brings in the best possible talent, too. I got so much respect for him and what he's done, and I'm so proud of him that over the last 7 to 10 years, I mean, he has just really became a force in North Carolina. And, you know, North Carolina has a stigma. It's famous for really unsuccessful promoters screwing guys and going out of business. And to see a shining light, like, look, there's Tracy Myers at AML. He did the WrestleCade. There's Brian who runs PWX. There's a lot of guys here that are not in that mix of crappy guys to screw everybody. Brian, like he says, he likes to give guys a platform where they can get noticed, recognized, and have even more success. And I remember him calling me, telling me one of his guys had gotten a deal, and he was so proud of that guy and so proud of the fact that guy came out of his promotion. And you could tell that was his reward, was the fact that guy came from his promotion.
I love that. I love that.
Deal. Yeah, I mean,
says a lot.
It says everything about a guy, you know.
Yes, it does.
Got to be selfless in selfish times, and these are selfish times. And you know, when you find a selfless person in selfish times, you find somebody who is doing it for the love of the game, which is what it's all about.
You're right. So, you are right.
Great for him.
The time is now. I mean, my goodness. If I knew where the last hour and 5 minutes went, I'd tell you. But I can't because I don't know.
Real quick, we got to ask our listeners to do us a favor. Could you run over to YouTube, put in one word, Triple T Radio, all caps, and then a space and the word live in caps. Triple T Radio, one word, space, live. Go over there. Please hit like and subscribe. It really helps us. You know, you want to think that you can always continue to run on Facebook Live and things like that, but we have to have a backup plan. And actually, I'm out of the car business for more wrestling industry work. Well, hey, Brian, congratulations. You graduated. You got out of that business for more. Look, that was the dream.
I was wondering if you were going to read that or not.
The dream was always for him to be able to make a living in the wrestling business. So if he's able to do that, I'm even more happy for him than I was 2 minutes ago, if that's even possible. So that's just great. That's it. Congratulations, and you definitely got to come on the show. You might be camera shy, so we can always black out his face, but you got to talk. No, just kidding. We definitely want to get you on the show.
We don't even have to have you on. We don't even have to have your video at all. Fans can hear you, and that'll be great.
And congratulations on being able to leave the car business. I know it's a grind. I was in it. It's just a constant, what have you done for me today? Forget you sold 4 cars yesterday or 10 cars or 20 cars. It's a today thing. And I just want to tell Brian, congratulations for being able to have more opportunities in the wrestling business and be able to move towards that as his career. I know that's always been his dream. So, you know, and for everybody that's listening, look, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on here and listening. Normally it's Tuesday nights, 8 to 9. I had a very difficult day yesterday, and Nick said, look, let's just run it tomorrow night. So we did, and I appreciate that. But you can catch us Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be 9 o'clock Atlantic time up in Canada where Nick is.
That's
You know
right.
that it's going to be 7 o'clock Central time. And if you're on the Pacific Coast, why, it's going to be 5 o'clock. So wherever you're at, listen in, please. We appreciate you listening. We want you to jump in here with any questions or comments. Brian, it was great to have you on tonight. You know, I also had Steve Lawrence say hi to me. So, look, we love hearing from you. I've got it set up now where I can be on my Facebook and do the show so I can see your comments and respond to you. So, guys,
So
look.
proud of you. You've come
Yeah.
such a long way.
I have, too. Technology-wise, I have, man. It's unbelievable.
Thank
Just as
God
I was
for
looking at
Rianne.
you. I know.
Thank God.
Your little boy is grown up, Nick. Your little boy's grown up.
What would I do without her? She's totally got you ready for every Tuesday.
Shut up, Nick. Let me take some credit. Damn you.
Hey,
Damn you.
just remember one thing. Q-Ball Carmichael is a brand.
That's right. You know that, brother. He is a brand. And with that, hey, thanks everybody for listening. Tune in next week, Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. We'll be here live, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Adjust your clocks otherwise. Nick, thanks for a great show. All the guys that chimed in. Brian, I'm happy for you. Steve Lawrence, thanks for chiming in. Everybody else that I missed, appreciate it.
Thanks,
Catch us
Tim.
next week. Please hop over to YouTube, Triple T Radio, Space Live, and hit like and subscribe for us if you would. And everybody have a great week.